Welcome to another episode of Tales from the Tables with your host, Rob Bradley,
John Charles Ciccarelli,
James Burrows,
and Damien Hallwood.
If you guys knew what we just had to get through in order to get this recording off the ground, you'd be like, wow, those guys are so dedicated. They're such dedicated podcasters. Oh my God.
It's true. We've enjoyed listening to our own intro for like 6 times in a row at this point just to figure that out. And this is all James's fault. So let's just clarify that from the start.
And that's why James isn't here on this podcast today, because we anticipated that he was going to fuck up royally like this. So we fired him, basically. So James has now been fired.
Yeah, he's no longer with us.
No longer with us. Cheerio, James. All your death saves have been failed, and you're welcome to the world of being one of our listeners.
Ooh, it's a good place to be. I hear.
How you guys doing? All well?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah. We should clarify that James isn't fired, just in case we leave that lingering.
Yeah, that's just a joke. That's just a joke.
Some people don't
is
know.
It?
Or is it? Be careful, James.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good week. Yeah, can't complain. Lots of D&D.
Cool. Oh, nice. Yeah, Damien?
Yeah, nice. The weather is starting to get real nice, at least my end of the country. I don't know about you across the water, JC, but the weather's warm.
Sam, it has come to us now, the town of the tide. Yeah, it's starting to finally be sunny.
I must be the most complainy person ever, because I prefer the winter to the summer, which I know is
all right. We're kicking Rob out of the podcast too. Goodbye.
It's a mad thing to admit, but I really do, because I in the heat, I enjoy it, but then it just gets too much for me, and I just can't handle the fact there's no aircon in the UK, and you just can't escape it. Once it starts, that's it. You're fucked.
Is that why you do surfing in the summer?
Yeah,
you get to the waves to cool off a bit.
I love being in the sea. Yeah, I love being in the sea. It's cool. Even in the summer when you go surfing, you get freaking hot as hell. Like it's
of course.
I'm a winter surfer. Like I prefer the cold.
Oh, geez. Yeah, well, I guess I've never been surfing, but I guess those suits insulate you pretty well, right? So
you have a hat, you got gloves, you got boots, the whole shebang. And what happens to me, what tends to happen to me pretty much all the time, is whenever I catch a really decent wave, if I come off it, I'll then be because I've ridden it for so long, and I'm trying to get myself, I'm absolutely shattered from the because it really taxes you in terms of
physically, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a massive workout. And then when the next wave is literally right about to hit you, and normally with one big wave, another big wave will follow it. So you've got no time to gather yourself together to get your board, which is now flung over there somewhere, to get that back. And then the wave just hits you, your hat comes off, you're under freezing water, and you just get ice cream head. When you eat an ice cream and it makes your head go, you have that all over your head. So you've got no idea what up is or where down is, because you're so disorientated, because the wave is literally just put you into what's like a tumble dryer, like a washing machine. You're just all over the place, and then you're trying to find the surface. And then by the time you find the surface, the third wave comes.
Oh my God! They come in threes and trios. Are you kidding me?
In the winter in the UK, where I surf, which is I surf between Croyd, Polzeath, and Newquay, which are some of the main sort of surf spots.
Nice.
That's really cool. Yeah,
I have massive respect for anybody that does any sport that involves pitting yourself against the wiles of nature, surfing and snowboarding and skiing. These are elements of nature designed to murder you. They were designed to thin out the population of the world, literally starving groups of creatures to death, or creating avalanches and slopes so steep that you're not supposed to just move down them on what is essentially 2 narrow planks of wood strapped to your feet. And humans were oh yeah, this is a great idea. Let's do this down mountains. And I'm or across giant waves. And I'm all right, y'all crazy over there.
It comes from the ignorance of our impending death. The doom of death. We're so ignorant of our death that and what that might be. The great big abyss of oblivion that's waiting for us all, then we're just like, oh fuck it, I'll just like go skiing down the mountain because like but if I die, what? I'm not going to die because death doesn't really doesn't happen. I don't think about that ever, so why should I care? It's like, well, newsflash.
You're mortal. It's true.
Yeah, we did Scarfell Pike, which is sort of a smaller mountain climb a few years ago. Cool. And we're trudging up there in our warm weather clothing and our thick boots, and then there's a dude in his 50s comes running down the other way in shorts and t-shirt, running down slopes of sheer shale, just shale and gravel, and just running down it. It's
slopes of sheer shale. Say that 5
slopes
times
of
fast,
sheer
right?
shale.
Amazing. Yeah. Do you guys think that D&D has influenced your desire to be more adventurous in your waking life?
That's a good question. That's a great prompt for today, Rob. What a way to bring it in.
Yeah.
Yes, I would say
Damien,
so.
Go for it. Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah. Only insofar as I certainly don't have any desire to be put in the tumble dryer that is the freezing cold winter ocean. You can keep that one, Rob.
I'm going to take you fucking surfing. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
I'm finding my body on the other side of the Atlantic.
Honestly, every single one of my friends that I've taken surfing that have all said the same thing to me before we went. They were all like, I'm really going to hate this, Rob. This is really not my bag. I really don't like the ocean. I'm really not into this. And I'm like, it's okay. It's okay. We'll take baby steps. We'll take baby steps. By the end of like the weekend we've been surfing, they're stood up on a surfboard and they're screaming, "Cowabunga!" I'm like, see?
Respect.
Amazing.
I'll be like, you guys have seen, you guys have seen Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Do you remember that bit where the main character is training to surf with, oh God, who is it? What's the actor that plays Ant-Man? He's escaping me right now.
Paul Rudd.
Paul Rudd is the surf instructor. And he's like, yeah, man, you just got to like do nothing, just like chill. And then he finally does nothing. He's like, well, you got to do more than that. You're just laying on the board. That'll be me. I'll be that guy just laying on the board being like, I'm trying. I don't know.
That's still fun. Like you still like catching a wave on a board. I'm sure have you guys like done bodyboarding or anything like that? You ever caught a wave and like gone into the and you've gone into the beach?
Yeah.
And you're laying down.
I've done paddleboarding once actually, to be clarified. Yeah.
That's where the fun is. It's basically with surfing, all you're really doing is you're turning on that wave. So as you're riding the wave and you're coming up like this, you see the wave start to break behind you, and the wave doesn't just go like you should never surf in what's called dumpy waves where the wave just comes up and just goes poof, like never surf in that. What you should be surfing in is when a wave comes up and then starts to break gradually down like rolls down like right behind you. And as that's happening behind you, you turn your surfboard or your bodyboard and you ride the wave like this on an angle like that.
Nice.
And that's when you start feeling like you're like, this is fucking balling.
This is cool, right?
Cool as shit.
That's when you are
not
only facing nature, you are almost taking command of it. You are
you're becoming one with it.
Totally.
Welcome to Tales from the Tides, our surfing podcast.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I think we interrupted you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. That's going to be our offshoot podcast, Tales from the Tides. Get on it, Rob. It has kind of increased my desire to get out in the world a little bit. That's limited by having 2 small children right now. But even just going out for a walk locally or anything like that, it's always a source of inspiration. And I've been to Mexico a few times, which heavily inspired my interpretation of Tomb of Annihilation.
Nice.
That's really cool.
The Mayan ruins and Chichen Itza.
I've been there. Did you do the clap?
I did the clap. Yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool.
I'm so sorry you guys got the clap in Mexico.
So we both met up in Mexico and gave each other the clap. Basically, it cancelled each other out.
Yeah. For those that don't know, there's a pyramid in Chichen Itza that if you clap at it, so it's kind of standing away from it at it, the way the acoustics work, it hisses back at you from the top of the pyramid. It rasps at you. It's got other cool things like there's a snake motif at the base of it, like a snake head. And as the sun climbs over the the pyramid, it casts angular shadows that create diamonds across the snake's back in shadow and stuff like that.
It's a pattern on the snake skin.
Yeah,
how cool
really
is that?
incredible stuff. And that's it. Just stuff like that is so inspiring to help you describe these ancient ruins and things like that with this kind of level of forethought and planning and execution that you wouldn't necessarily attribute to an ancient civilization.
Absolutely.
For sure.
It's interesting as well that the artistic style of the Aztecs and the Incas and the Mayans is all very similar, because obviously they're from South America, but also the fact that they're just this is how we do our art. We do our art like this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like with Egyptians, like how Egyptians have a fixed
I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
It's incredible. And you're like, how? So like everyone, like they
over
all
the
knew
course of
that's the style to do.
Yeah, and especially with ancient Egypt, over the course of literally thousands of years of history, we are dialing it back a little bit. To answer your question, Rob, yes, D&D has absolutely inspired my love of adventure. It also means I sit in my computer more, so I don't know how much more adventuring I'm doing. But when I was a kid, I really wanted to be an archaeologist, and I even took classes up until college to see if I still wanted to pursue that path. Ultimately, I was like, no, I'll be an actor. That's a great idea. In archaeology, I was obsessed with Egyptology, and it started, believe it or not, with literally two things that happened in the early 2000s, which was Brendan Fraser's 1999 The Mummy movie, and Lara Croft 4, Tomb Raider 4 rather, called The Last Revelation, which was set in ancient Egypt, or Egypt, as she's exploring the ruins. And yeah, in Egypt, fun factoid, Cleopatra is closer to our history, to our present day, than the pyramids at Giza were to her at that time. So they are literally older than that span of 2,000 years that it's been since her reign, which is crazy. If you think about it, just insane. And there's no real way to put it in perspective to think that there was so much history in ancient Egypt, and has been so much history in Egypt as a country till now, that there are things that people forgot how to do while they were still speaking ancient Egyptian dialect.
Wow.
I have a factoid from a lot longer ago than that, which puts time in perspective in a crazy way. So it's a similar vein to yours, JC, is that if you take the distance or the length of time between Stegosaurus, everyone's seen Stegosaurus with the spines on his back, walking the earth, and Tyrannosaurus Rex, who needs no introduction, walking the earth, and then the time span between Tyrannosaurus Rex walking the earth and now, the distance is longer between Stegosaurus and Tyrannosaurus Rex than it is Tyrannosaurus Rex and now.
Yeah, we have this preconceived notion of like the Tyrannosaurus Rex eating a Stegosaurus, right, and like fighting, but that never happened.
No,
right?
Not at all.
Because they were millions of years apart.
Bloody hell's bells!
It's mind blowing.
Yeah.
Thing it's a shame, isn't it? Because you know that aliens would have come down during that period and gone like, "Whoa, we're not going down there. Look at these guys. like there's some monsters. There's monsters down there." Yeah. We'll write that planet off. Yeah. Third planet in the solar system. Yeah, we'll just write that one. Yeah, we're not gonna see that. We're not gonna go visit those guys.
Yeah. The following day,
ever again. Yeah, never again. Yeah, ever again.
The following day, a rock hits the planet, makes them all extinct, and a brand new, rapidly developing sentient species grows over the next
mankind
tens of thousands of years. Yeah,
right.
Wild.
Most evil, most successful creature in the universe. My brother actually has a really amazing theory on.
I thought you were going to say my brother is the most evil, most successful creature in the universe. And I was like, whoa,
he's definitely on the borderline of tyrannical. I'll give him that. Yeah, So he believes that the reason we haven't been contacted by aliens is because we are not typical of life throughout the universe.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
And that we're actually quite terrifying to potentially intelligent creatures because we're warring,
right?
And because we are meat eaters. So that we get our energy from life. We're not photosynthesis. We don't get our energy from the sun in order to exist. We have to consume life in order to live. Even if that's plants, we still have to eat them in order to maintain our life. Right. Yeah, we're carbon-based life forms, and maybe that's rare. And then he takes it another step further. Have you guys ever heard of the double split experiment?
Yes,
in
I don't think
science.
so.
Yeah. So basically, what the double slit experiment is that you get 3 splits in quantum. This is like quantum experiment, and they send light particles through these splits, and they also send wave particles through these splits. However, the light particles, because they are being sent as individual rays, they shouldn't react as waves. They should react as particles, but they
Sure.
react as waves on the form, which basically suggests that their arrangement is only it can basically they can be anywhere at any point, but it changes. They become a solid state particle when they're observed, which makes no
Weird.
sense. So
Oh, that's
the
very
fact
bizarre.
that we are looking at them, they
Changes how they behave.
how they behave, and suddenly they become one
Wow.
state. Yeah, have a look at it. It's called a double split experiment. So his
Okay.
theory is that if our reality isn't showing us what we're supposed to see, based on that, maybe we're in a prison, and maybe Earth
This is
is
the
actually a
Matrix.
prison planet, and we're in a prison planet because we're an evil race.
Right.
I'm like,
we're a
well,
base
could be.
race.
Yeah, could
Well,
be.
I just wrote a
yeah.
campaign setting.
Yeah,
There you go,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
It's where Earth is actually a prison and has been for its entire existence for humanity.
Yeah.
It's similar to the 3 Body Problem show on Netflix, and those
Sure.
we've talked about it a bit, and someone here I think has read the book. But it's the same concept. The alien species that's visiting. Spoilers. I don't care. At me if you want on Discord. We can use engagement. No, but the alien species that is threatening to visit literally can't comprehend humanity on a scale because they realize they're capable of falsehood, aka lying, and it comes from a very simple example where they're telling a story of the Little Red Riding Hood. They're one of the humans is dictating the story to the alien listeners, and they go, "We don't understand how. What are you telling? What is this word fiction? Like what they literally can't grasp the concept. The fact that we lie to each other is something that they have no capacity to comprehend." And thus, that's why they are like, okay, well, we'll be honest with you. We're coming to annihilate you because you are clearly not cool. So yeah, that takes me up to episode 7. Congratulations, everybody.
It's great.
You've been spoiled.
The books are pretty good. Like the Dark Forest, the second one is exceptional. They're all really good. I prefer. I tried watching the TV show. I just couldn't get into it. But like the books, the books are brilliant. But yeah, amazing. Really interesting theories.
That's one of the challenges of
really
running the Star Trek RPG is coming up with a concept, even for a one shot, that matches that level of sort of clever science fiction as well as sort of allegorical or metaphorical sort of example of something from our world that's projected onto an alien species. That's the challenge of that. Probably for the same for writing the show, I imagine, as well, is coming up with that conceit that makes the mission interesting. That isn't just because Star Trek, you can't get away with just making it a combat thing. Because that's not.
There's got to be moral conflict somewhere.
It's funny, isn't it? Because when you look at Star Trek and you look at like the premises of it and how it's set up, it is literally like the utopian version of where we wished ourselves to go if we made all of the right choices, and if we were positive human beings that generally cared about each other, and do you know what I mean? Like, and we realized that science was the way ahead. We were like, right, science is the way
progress.
Ahead. Progress. This is what we are. Let's do it. Let's go this way. Let's look after our poor. Let's eradicate the poor. Let's get rid of the monetary system. Let's make it all about bettering ourselves, and forever. Because when you better yourself, you better everyone else's situation. And let's become explorers, and let's do what we were meant to do. Let's like really tap into who we really are. We're We're friggin' explorers. You know,
and the fact that like even with this, go ahead, sorry,
or we're a virus,
or
so it's like, but that's the choice, right? We've got a choice. We totally have a choice as a race. We could either be a virus or we could be explorers, and fantastic for the whole of existence.
The trouble is we have to the big problem with that is that we have to make one of those decisions collectively.
Absolutely.
And we have to get there first. We have to get there first.
And greed is the thing. Greed is the one thing that is like holding us back from everything. It's the reason there's so many wars. It's the reason there's like, everyone just wants, we need more resources. Do you? Like what? Like just have the
Yeah.
resources that you've got and just, or
And
maybe
the
be
core of
nice.
that,
Maybe someone will give them to you because you're nice.
and I think the core of that greed is fear, because greed in general terms, we're getting very philosophical on this
Good.
podcast today.
Good.
But
Good
I
stuff.
think that there's something to be said that greed comes out of the fear of having not enough and
Yeah.
not being enough, right?
Mm.
So you get greedy for more resources because in our world that translates to success. And
Yeah.
you want success because you want comfortable living and you want to help the people that are closest to you. And I think overall humanity can be and has obviously been an empathetic species. But the reason that we have these resource wars, the reason that we're greedy, is because we have a fear of the unknown. If we don't have the resources we need, we don't know what will happen, or we fear what might happen. And that fear leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. It's that sort of concept.
Yeah, totally.
The thing I was going to say about Star Trek is I think there was such a perception. I have, again, so much respect for the shows and Gene Roddenberry that like I really one day want to sit down and just binge every single episode and movie ever. But there's something to be said that
I could give you a list.
Yeah,
I'll take it. I'll take the recommended reading.
I've got a really good list of the next gen episodes to watch, where you cut out all of the crap ones that are like.
Don't cut out Q. I know he's in a lot of crap ones, but Q is great.
He needed to be in a film. I think they needed to do something about
they needed to do a Q film.
Something to do with, because I wanted to see like where he's from, like what the hell's going on there. Like there's something they had like a godlike entity that they could really played with there. Like in a really amazing way. Like maybe they found, like, I'm sure they've probably done an episode that I've not seen of Star Trek where they go to like a planet and they're all Q worshippers. They all think Q's God. Like that could be cool for a Star Trek Adventures.
That would be really cool
game.
Yeah.
You know? And you've got to try and convince them that this guy is a complete nutcase, isn't actually God. He's just a pain in the ass.
Every D&D game needs a Q. Every D&D game needs a wacky NPC that is just there to frustrate the players, but to challenge them morally and to get them to think better and to be better than themselves. Absolutely. And that was the thing. I think there's so much fear that you need active conflict. Like in the pitch for Star Trek, if humanity has reached a utopia, then there's no conflict. But the obvious success of the concept and the many shows over 50 plus years of history, more than that at this point, right? Closing on, are we past 70 years of Star Trek at this point?
Came out in the 50s. So late 50s.
So late 50s. So we're closing in on 70, which is wild. And the fact that there's so much entertainment and so much story to be told in that thing. And I think that's a great TTRPG exercise too. Have fun, have an idea of like a relatively utopian society, a highly advanced society that has achieved peace, but they're finding conflict in other places, and they're having to make these moral questions. Like you said, Damien, it's not easy to write an idea of these humans that have achieved not enlightenment, but enough that they can visit other species and compete with their ideologies.
There's a really, and I know you'll sort of champion this. There's a really great video from Matt Colville about this subject, talking about war. Video. Yeah, talking about war in D&D campaigns or TTRPG campaigns per se, and saying like if you have a civilization or a world that doesn't have war, why? Because not having war is really hard.
Yes.
It is really difficult to not have a war, because everybody has to agree. Everyone has to not violently disagree, at least. Resources need to be manageable for everybody involved, with no, like you say, no desire to push further. So if you have a campaign setting with no war, why?
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. It's the same can be said about like you look at like civilizations as well, of course. Like if you have like a communist state, there's only so much time that people start to realize that not everyone is as equal as everyone can be, because Farmer John can only grow so many carrots when Fisherman Fred can fish in abundance. But when they go to market and they do their exchange, he's only left with a couple of fish, and he's only got one carrot. But yet earlier on he had loads of fish, and that's sort of like, and depending on the person's character, it's everyone's so different. It's like, well, you can it's why we've struggled so much. Like you guys say, it's why we've struggled so much to build a decent civilization that's like, okay, that's it, we figured it out. Because we can't figure it out.
Yeah,
we can't.
I would love to run. Many times I've thought about getting a pen to paper for a campaign that is its central thing is a war.
Yeah.
And a war is in like it's all around you, rather than just it's a distant thing or.
Isn't that what Dragonlance is supposed to be? War of the Dragon Queen?
I've never really read the Dragonlance book.
Have I got it? Oh, I might have it.
I have the adventure. I haven't run it. I was in a handful of sessions that a friend was running.
Was it good?
But yeah, no, it's a really cool adventure overall. I joined a few episodes in, and I had to leave a few episodes later, so I didn't get to stick around. But he did a very good job, the DM, of communicating the fact that the war is like all around you, and when you're adventuring, you're actually basically the vanguard of the army that's coming behind you, at least for a portion of this. So like you are going in advance of the army that's literally a couple of days behind you in order to establish allies and regions where that army can camp and hopefully put together some stuff. I have no idea how it plays out in practice because I didn't unfortunately I couldn't stick around for the whole campaign, but yeah,
it's funny, isn't it, because I've been aware of this for a little while actually. Like when DMs are like saying like, oh, we want to do like big epic war like battles in my games and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but that's a bit boring. And also it's difficult. It's difficult to manage that. It's like if you look at the film Saving Private Ryan, that opening scene is great, it's incredible, but you really get the nuances from the story, from like them taking over a little, for them going into a town, them having to like the town's been ransacked by like the Germans, they need to like figure out what's going on, they're trying to find this guy, like Saving Private Ryan's actually a really good story, and you could easily go
that's exactly the sort of
boom like that. There you go.
Exactly the sort of idea I would love to do. Is this like
brilliant?
Like it, because it's the same as sort of a lot of the tabletop war games are going more skirmish based rather than large scale, because it's so hard to manage that you're instead taking smaller squads against smaller squads in these elite missions.
Totally.
And all of the sort of great war movies kind of follow that.
That's true.
It's how wars are fought now. Anyway, like World War II was fought like that. Obviously there were battles, but those battles were like big epic battles that happened. And then once they got the land, they then had to go into that bit. Okay, now we need to take like town at a time,
tactical objectives.
Like you say, the vanguard need to go ahead. They need to check things out. Yeah. What's going on here? They end up like talking to the local mayor, who's like they can't figure him out. Has he been speaking to like? Has he got spies amongst them? Like are there German spies there or something? Like that kind of thing. Another war that could be interesting to put into a D&D setting would be the Vietnam War. Because the Vietnam War were literally just individual units of men going into a jungle. There was no land to capture because the northern Vietnamese didn't capture any land. They were just fucking everywhere, under the ground, ready to get you. And that's guerrilla warfare. And every single army I got taught this when I was in the army, by the way. Every single army had always been taught how to fight like you would if it was World War II, right?
Right.
The Korean War, fairly sort of similar sort of structure as World War II. And then as soon as Vietnam happened, it was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, it changed the war.
Who the hell is our enemy? They go into a town and there'd be like some Vietnamese there, and there'd be like guys with guns or guys with knives ready to like slaughter the soldiers when they weren't looking in their sleep, or go get them when they're in their sleep and stuff. They had no idea who their enemy was. It was terrifying for the Americans who were there. Yeah,
that's something kind of that's something I love to try and incorporate into my D&D worlds, is the idea of the other culture. Yeah, Vietnam.
Well, that whole terrifying thing is brilliant.
No, the idea that the culture's like, and it's a difficult thing to do, especially if you're having players take on one of these species, but having the other cultures like elves and dwarves be a drastically different culture, almost to the point of seeming alien, like their beliefs and the way they communicate and the way they communicate with other species being actually quite challenging, quite difficult, rather than the very clear Tolkien-esque analogs.
We all speak common.
Yeah, we all speak common, and we like music and poetry and the joy of life, and we like mining and digging up stones and gems. But instead, taking that further and making them really quite alien, and having elves look at humans with a really kind of almost alien eye, almost an alien eye of like, we simply cannot grasp your culture, and you simply cannot grasp ours, and that is why we will never be unified and accept you as a species as an equal.
The problem with that is, of course, though, with like what's going on in today's society, what's been going on for the last good sort of 50 or so years, is that we are so desperate to try and see each other's races as equal. And we are obviously, of course we are. This is obviously a very touchy subject to bring up in a D&D podcast.
We're going deep on this podcast.
But those themes, you can see that they are actively avoided in D&D settings because they can generate such divisiveness, and that's if you've got a good group that understand that, and you can play with them, and you can have a look at these ideas and really explore them. Incredible. Like you can really go to town.
You have to have that trust.
But you have to have that trust that you're not going to get someone who is going to be xenophobic or have certain sort of ideas
garden
in terms
variety
of
racist.
Exactly. And also as well, because like if you're suggesting in your game that elves are different to humans in such a massive way, it's like, well, does that say that races are different in a massive way to each other in the real world? No, we just have different cultures.
That's the tricky thing, because
that's the thing. Yeah.
That's the tricky thing, because, and it's again, we're going really deep on this one. The slight difference there, at least it mechanically, is that they're technically a different species.
Correct. Whereas humanity isn't. We're not different.
Humanity is not. Yeah. We are all one species that draws lines in sand for some reason. Whereas in D&D they are, and I understand that they can be seen as a reflection of our different cultures, and it is really difficult. You've got to have the right group, like you say. But then sort of the joy comes from that kind of connection between you and entirely different species. I'm going to mention Mass Effect again.
Yes, I was waiting to bring this into this topic. I really was.
Guys love Mass Effect.
They do that brilliantly.
I will play it. I'll play it.
So
play it like this, expecting like the most amazing thing ever, and then be like,
you won't be disappointed. I am not afraid of hyping this up enough. It's that good. Anyway, sorry, Damien. Go ahead.
The species in that behave, some of them, incredibly differently to humans, and are very resistant to humans. Without going too much into the story of Mass Effect, humans are the youngest species to kind of join the galactic overall galactic scene.
Cool.
And so
that's cool.
They are kind of looked at in the way you expect them to be looked at, especially given that the way First Contact went with humans wasn't great. So, but some of the species like the Elcor and the Hanar are incredibly alien. And the way they
Interesting
behave...
that you mentioned those two together, Damien.
Yeah. Is incredibly alien.
And get a bit excited there, JC.
And
that's an inside joke for the game.
Yeah. And yet you find yourself very much warming to them and lapping up every minute you get to spend with them because they are so different. And that is the right way to do it, rather than make it because they're different species, not because they're different cultures.
Okay, so do you guys think then that the Wizards of the Coast should change the name races to species?
I mean, they are doing.
They're literally doing it. Yeah,
they are. Yeah.
Which I think is one of the few things I'm actually looking forward to in the newest edition of D&D. Is really, for all intents and purposes, is just a name change or just like a tag change on a thing. But it in this day and age, that makes a very veritable difference. Yeah.
It's an important distinction, a really important distinction.
Yeah,
because
the interesting thing with Mass
Effect
Effect,
racism if you don't.
That's very true, and like that's what I was kind of going to say about Mass Effect as like the IP and the world, is that it's a very interesting line between Star Trek and Star Wars, because it kind of is the conflict, the scale of the conflict is a lot more similar in some respects to the Star Wars mythos, right? There is this effectively, it's not really an empire, but there is this unabatedly bad for everyone involved, bad for organic life villain that everyone is generally opposed to. But the way the races in this, or the species rather, interact with each other is much more Star Trek. There's a unified galactic council. There are everyone speaks the same language, or I think it's excused in the lore that you all have translators like in your brain that helps translate the language into the same tongue. But everyone, it's almost like they all get along. And as you're building your crew and your ship, you have members of those different species aboard, even though you have predominantly a mostly human ship to start and a human crew to start. So yeah, Rob, check it out. This, what I'm really trying to say here is nothing philosophical. I'm just trying to get more people to play Mass Effect because it's brilliant.
I'll play it. I'll definitely play it. I will definitely check it out. Yeah. I will. I promise you, I will. Mass Effect.
But no,
play that fucking game.
Yeah. In terms of like writing your own story and adventure, D&D 5e is very interesting to me as a case study for this, because it's humble origins of being effectively a dungeon crawl experience, right? Like a very traditional, I go room by room, poke the floor with a 10-foot pole. Are there any traps? Oh, there's a dragon around this corridor, sort of adventure.
Right.
And the fact that it's evolved in its 40 plus years of history to become much more of a role-playing focus, even though it's always been billed as an RPG. And the stories we attempt to tell with this, it doesn't necessarily, or the system doesn't necessarily always suit those stories. And yet people find more and more creative ways. We were talking about large scale conflict, right? Like the war. And I know in Dragonlance, the way they handle it is, even when you're in a massive war battle, what you're effectively, they have these really cool mechanics for it that I think really works in its favor. You have initiative-based combat encounters as like on the sidelines of it. And if you literally move too far away from a certain point on the grid map into the thick of it, quote unquote, then there's no more initiative. You're basically guaranteed to die because you're in a massive battle with hundreds of foes and allies running in chaos and magic exploding and fire and stuff.
Do you guys remember the old Lord of the Rings games on PlayStation, the sort of battlers?
Yes.
That is a really
exactly
great example of that, because what that game would do, it would put you in a small arena with a small amount of enemies, but the background would be swamped with literally background enemies running past and warring with each other that you couldn't interact with.
One of the first scenes is Helm's Deep, and you are just Gandalf, like taking objectives, but as a small platoon. And then, yes, it's rendering in the background the hundreds and hundreds of orcs and Uruk-hai fighting the defenders of Helm's Deep.
That's what it made me think of, is that.
Yeah.
You as a GM are rendering the war behind everybody, but actually effectively gating it so that you can't really get into it.
Yeah. Have you guys ever played the Total War series?
Yes.
No, yeah. I keep hearing so many good things about this.
I never have, to be honest, but I've looked at it and gone, So is it good? Is it Damien?
Yeah, I've played Shogun, the original Shogun, not the newer Shogun Total War. Cool. I've played Medieval Total War. I've played Rome Total War.
Which is your favorite?
Is there a Warhammer Total War?
There is. Yeah, there is.
Yeah. Okay. That's
not 40K though. It's the
but it's
not
even
school.
Age of Sigmar. It's before that.
Yeah. So it's like the Warhammer.
They are good. They are. It is massive. It is the opposite of what we're talking about. It is, and it can be massive scale battles where you have to keep your eye on every single unit, and you have to make sure that you're not having your archers being charged by a front line of cavalry or something like that, because they'll just get wiped out, versus pikemen or spearmen who will be able to defend better against that, and position your units to compensate for that and use the high ground and pepper people with arrows as they're approaching. And you have to think about it like a large scale war, and some of the scales that it can get to, you're talking thousands and thousands of individual soldiers.
It sounds very technical.
I'm surprised Games Workshop haven't made like their own computer game effectively that is basically that. Like you're basically playing 40k, but in a computer game. Like you've got like
as like a military
like it's Total War. You
campaign.
can see the distances that your guys can move. It's turn based.
A 40k Total War would be wild.
Yeah, I'd get it.
I would be all over that.
I'd get it in a fucking heartbeat, man.
Yeah.
I'd be like, if I could be Space Wolves, I'd be like, yep, done.
Yeah.
I'd be all over it. And if you could do your own paint schemes as well,
yeah,
you dudes, like pick the colors and stuff. You can make your own factions. Oh God, yeah, I'd love that.
Is there not? I'm surprised that there isn't.
There are
games. Right?
There are games.
There are 40k games.
You've got bolt gun.
Not in the scale of like the war effort. Like
Dawn of War. Dawn of War series is the closest.
Yeah.
But even then, it's more tabletop sized.
It's like you take a group and they go to one place, they shoot some dudes, and they move somewhere else and shoot some dudes, rather than here's your battlefield, here's your gun. Because it'd be great because you've got here's your 2,000 points, build an army. Here's what you've got available to you, and they could totally micro purchase it out as well. For God's sake, just they do like what was the Coast do with Magic the Gathering? Like I've got Arena, and I still buy cards on Arena every now and again. I'll pay like £5 and get myself like a pack of 15 booster pack or something, and be like, ooh, and then just because I'm an idiot.
Here's a dumb question. Why is there a way that if you own a physical card, can you have that in Arena? Like just by inputting a code or something like that? Okay,
there is. But if you buy you have to buy like the pre-built decks.
Sure.
And they have on the back of them a QR code. You scan that and you get that deck in Arena.
In the Arena. But you don't get that with the booster packs? Like if you unlock a really cool card in a booster pack, they should, man.
Unfortunately not, no. Most you get as you play it, it's actually very rewarding. It's a very rewarding game in the sense that I've maybe spent, I don't know, about £20 in 2 years.
That's actually not bad.
Yeah,
considered it probably could be a lot worse.
And you are constantly given free booster packs for playing.
Yeah, okay.
Like if you play on a regular basis, they'll be like, "Oh, here you go. It's like a wild card. Here's like a mythic card. Here's a rare card." And you could use those to then go onto the card database to purchase those cards. So you don't actually have to. So you get given a token for a rare card. You go on the database, find a rare card that you want, and then have it. Add it into your thing.
That's a good formula. They figured it out.
Yeah, they've totally figured it out. Like they'll be. I've got a mate who spent a good £400 on his cards. He plays all the time.
Which you could do, right?
Which you could do, yeah.
We've gone and done it. We've gone and mentioned Wizards of the Coast production values.
Hey, we transitioned.
I have to raise this here.
Uh-oh.
So,
hit us, Damien.
Ahead of the arrival of Vecna himself in his big book. There are people who have had their hands on the book and have had chance to fully review it.
Oh, like pre-reviewers? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Although it seems like some real confusion has happened there because some previewers were told that they could have early access to the book if they pre-ordered it. But then after the 30th of April, if you pre-ordered it, you didn't get early access to it.
Right.
Which is really weird.
That is weird. Okay.
But that's a whole nother story. My point here is,
I think I know what they're trying to do.
It does mean I have seen a fair amount about the book at this point. And again, as last week, I won't be going into any spoilers. But I have concerns.
No, I'm kidding. You have concerns.
Mm-hmm.
What are those concerns?
Many concerns. Shit. Many concerns I will have to go into with you in private because they are heavily spoilerific.
For sure.
But the one I wanted to raise here, talking about production values, is it does seem like the maps in the book are going to be black and white.
No, not the hatch, not the hatched maps.
Yes.
God damn it!
Which is by I think the name is Dyson Logos is the people that produce that style of map, and then
I've definitely heard that name.
They have Francesca Berold is doing, probably because everything I've seen on that website is world maps. They've done the Strixhaven one and the Dragonlance one. So that's probably a large scale world map. Yeah. I haven't seen that, but the previews on D&D Beyond, some of the page screenshots I've seen, of which there are very few, are the hatched style map, akin to those in Descent into Avernus.
Baldur's Gate, Descent
Yeah.
into Avernus. You know what? I think I had seen something like that too, and I was afraid to believe it, so I just kind of ignored it. Because Nest of the Eldritch Eye has a full, very nicely rendered colored map. Granted, it's only the one, but that makes sense. They're not bad maps.
No. I don't want to sound like I'm throwing shade at those maps. They're beautifully rendered.
Yeah.
But this is
could be better though, right?
They're beautifully shaded.
For those in a world where VTT is the thing now.
Yeah.
Maps are so important. For my Avernus campaign, I had to source so many third-party maps, which are becoming increasingly monetized. It's incredibly hard to find them for free now.
Well, maybe they're doing that to help. I mean, this is me playing devil's advocate here, but maybe they're doing it to help those creators, the artists, so that they can create the versions of those maps. They're kind of like, here's your blueprint, Mr. Artist. You make as many of those versions as you like, because you're going to have an abundance of people that want to buy them off you. That would be if I was Wizards of the Coast and we made that decision, I'd be like, yeah, that's why we've done it. But is it?
In general, I can get that.
Well,
I can understand that. The difference I think here, and this speaks to some of the concerns I have that I can't go into, is this is a 50th anniversary culmination of the biggest edition of their game they've ever had.
Sure.
Going into a brand new one. To me, it feels like it should be like a love letter premium product.
Yeah.
It should be
agreed.
The very best that they could possibly put into the book. I mean, maybe that's asking too much. Maybe I sound like I'm a spoiled child with that. But it's the 50th anniversary, and given how much stock there is around the name Vecna these days, from Critical Role and from Stranger Things. And from D&D itself, it just feels like perhaps they haven't landed the scope that it seems like the adventure was meant to have.
Yeah.
Well, we will see, right?
We will see.
It's a tricky one because, like, the maps, like you say, they like when I looked at the Descent, when I ran the Descent into Avernus one with my group in London many years ago, which JC actually you rocked up into one, weren't you? You were in one of the games.
I remember, the back of the pub.
The maps were okay, but I definitely found that, like, when I was drawing because I draw them out on my actual like big like plain map paper thing, and I'd try and do it as like detailed and as good as I could for the players, and I actually quite enjoyed doing that. But maybe what will happen is they'll probably bring out like, here's the maps for Vecna, and you could buy them as a separate thing. Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. I'll tell you what though, it's a double-edged sword because I'm running. I'm running Icewind Dale, and
you are what?
Those maps, those maps are color maps, and some of them very pretty. But for a great example is my players just very recently entered a laboratory, a quintessential Frankenstein's lab of a room, and describing it with all
necromancy?
these. No, it wasn't. It's much later than that. It's in the Spire.
It's in the Spire. Yeah.
Got a great NPC in it. The lab is beautifully described in the flavor text that the adventure gives you, and then when you look at the map, it is literally a 15 by 15 empty square.
Oh right.
Yep.
So the map is color. The map is a color map with stone, effects on it to make it look like it's made of black stone and everything. But there is zero furniture in any of the rooms.
Oh god, how annoying!
So it's
the community has produced beautiful versions of these.
Yeah.
There are many Patreons that produce great maps for Icewind Dale, for Baldur's Gate.
Nice.
But that's the thing too. Like, for instance, for Vecna, I'm running it out of the box. And Rob, I think, and Damien, you said this as well. You both hit points. If you're in an in-person setting, if you're playing in person, that's really all you need, because you're going to be drawing these maps down on a dry erase mat or one of the Chessex wet erase mats, right? Like I used to do.
Yeah.
But as you said, Damien, in the prevalence of VTT so much, there is an expectation when you're looking at a computer screen to see something, right? And sure, of course, there's theater of the mind online, very, very much so. But in an increasingly in an increasingly visual world and a world where people's attention spans quickly drift from that.
Yeah.
It's a miracle we have podcast listeners at all, I think, sometimes, because of the prevalence of visual media. But like, there's an expectation to see something, and there's nothing more rewarding after working hard on a beautifully detailed, colored map that people and the players go, ooh, you know, when they see the cool colors and the crystal hovering in the middle of the room, or you know, all the different columns, and especially with VTTs now, where you can put shadows and they can move around those shadows and stuff. Like, there's so much great technology that Vecna could, in the book, I mean, not the Lich, could have leveraged, and it, you know, I'm sure they will. I'm sure even the hatch maps will have, you know,
I'll posit
rendered walls. But
I'll posit another benefit of it too, is it, especially for players that like a map, but even those that aren't necessarily tactically minded, knowing where everything is in the room, like where's the table I can climb on, where's the bookcase I can push over, where's the burning brazier of hot coals that I can throw in the face of the enemy, it inspires people to use it. Now, you can describe all of those things, but in the heat of combat, if it's not there in front of you, it's hard to remember when you're already juggling your spells and your abilities. Yeah. But if you've described this burning hot brazier of fiery coals in the corner of the room, and then there is a brazier in the room on the map, the player can go, I'm going to kick that over. You said that's a brazier, right? Can I kick that over and make the difficult terrain around it with the hot coal? It really helps fuel the roleplay.
Yeah, totally.
Fuel. I see what you did there.
Yeah, hey, I'm here all week. Try the veal. So it really does help players sort of be more creative, I think, when they can see the options on the quote unquote page in front of them.
Yeah.
Rather than just be the hack and slash, which D&D is kind of as a base designed to be.
It's their prompts, right? It's their prompts of to make their decisions. They can just see it and they go, okay, well, yeah, there's a chair there, there's a table there. I'm going to get that table, I'm going to put that chair on there, and I'll go around here, and then I'll set fire to this, and I'm going to, you know, yeah, totally. It's
it's also a double-edged sword, because there's so many very beautifully furnished and detailed maps that I use to represent locations that for actual official adventures that have no maps for it. But then the artist takes creative liberties and puts a couple of weird-looking embedded crystals in a skull on a table. I'm thinking of Mahadi's office from Descent into Avernus specifically. And then my players constantly look at it on the map and be like, what is that? What can I do with that? And I'm like, I don't know. It's one of 50 things in the room. Do you think I came up with an effect just for every single one? It's just a thing. It's just a thing. And so constantly I'm being like, hey, is this a door? Can I take this door? I'm like, yes. Where does it go? To another room that I will quickly render. Let's take a minute. You know,
you're right.
That can happen.
I've had that happen a couple of times. I've had like a great big wilderness map, and there's like these 3 gravestones on this map. I don't know if you guys have seen the map or know of it. And there's just 3 gravestones just off from the track over there. And they're like, what are these? And I'm like,
they're rocks.
Roll me an investigation check. They're like, oh, what does it say on the gravestone? And I'm like, and they're like, they're rolling a natural 20, and I'm like, fuck.
I'm literally
Vecna.
I thrive on that. I thrive.
Cat.
Yeah. I love it, but it can be a little exhausting when you're in a cemetery and they're like, can I write down the names of every single person on each one of these tombstones? And you're like, yes, I totally have that list prepared. Quickly shuffle papers.
You're 7 hours into a game. You're just like knackered. You're like, great. I'm gonna like make this shit up. It's like the amount of Steves and Allens they meet on like NPCs when it's like 7 hours into a game is just like, his name's Steve. Like Steve, I'm like, yes.
And then they love Steve, and he's with you for the rest of the adventure.
Yeah.
And you just happen to give Steve the most difficult voice and accent in your disposal.
I introduced my my Spectarium players to Caliban, my satyr sort of malaligned trinkets merchant. He runs a shop called Caliban's Curios. He's a recurring NPC in many of my games, but he's a direct rip of Watto from The Phantom Menace. Hey, my friends, how you doing? all right. So I always think, this is going to be like a 10-minute interaction. And then I'm there for 2 hours going like, yeah, what do you think you are? Some sort of telekinetic wizard waving your hands in front of my face? Get out of here. And I'm like,
It's like the equivalent of swallowing sandpaper.
yeah, exactly. Afterwards,
Christ
I'm recovering
almighty.
for a week.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Right, well, I think we need to cover the news, Damien. I know there's not much of it.
There's really very little, and one of the big ones was what I've just discussed, was about, it's not really a news item, but kind of more and more details coming out about Vecna and what it contains. We will discuss some of the other concerns I have in a more private situation where spoilers aren't a problem.
Ideally after the players have bought tickets for JC's Vecna game.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, I will say that,
like, I don't play that game.
No, I will say that
I will fix all of those issues.
Well, that's it. I will say that there is some very good stuff. There's some very good looking stuff, and the stuff that I have concerns with is stuff that it will just take the legwork of the GM to fix.
Right.
But yeah, and I should also point out, I haven't read the book. I've just seen various parts of it. I've seen certain pages. I've heard people's descriptions of the story. So I'm only going by that. So take
you
that
negative ninny. You.
I know. I'm going to get that reputation on this podcast.
Negative ninny.
So really quickly, we mentioned earlier Star Trek Adventures. It's getting a second edition. It is now available for pre-order.
Cool.
There is a free quick start sort of rules introduction that you can get hold of. And there is a core book. And there's some really pretty special edition core books. But what they've gone and done, the core book isn't overly expensive. Yep. It isn't overly expensive for a special edition.
Right.
But what they've done is they've released 3 special editions, one color for each of the core colors of Starfleet. So a blue, a gold, and a red.
Those bastards.
I know. And the delta on the front of the book, it has the individual symbols for medical operations and
Can I hazard a guess at what color you would want, Damien?
Go for it.
Ooh.
I reckon you'd want blue.
You are right. You are right. Science and medicine is the one I would be tempted to go for.
Thought so.
They're very beautiful. They look to be embossed like many of the Modifius books that they've done in the past when they do special editions. They're kind of an embossed cover. So yeah, second edition is looking really cool. The main front cover that isn't the special edition has a crew and a ship that's very reminiscent of Strange New Worlds. That they're bringing that corner of the Star Trek universe into second edition.
Well, yeah, why the hell not?
Yeah,
still not seen it.
It's great.
I need to watch. Is it good? Is it?
I really like it. It feels a lot more like Star Trek than a lot of the more modern stuff does.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So second edition, you can pre-order it now. Also, Wizards of the Coast have put out a statement saying that they will be bringing the revised rules, the 2024 versions of D&D, 2024 into 2025, grumble, the negative ninny of the podcast, is going to be in the system reference document after the Monster Manual releases in February. So it's version 5.2 of the SRD, or it will be. I should also point out there's no mention of the open gaming license within that article. It just mentions the system reference document.
Right.
But yeah,
they usually go part and parcel, right? Usually.
It makes sense. It makes sense to say that now that, ahead of the books coming out, it will be part of it. Somewhat expected, but it's nice to hear them saying it and showing that that's all going to be updated. Hopefully it won't be a internet breaking debacle like the last time they mentioned the OGL and the SRD.
Yeah, right. What a clusterfuck that was.
Indeed.
Nice.
And the only other real interesting one that I saw, I mentioned that the Arkham Horror role-playing game is coming out from Edge Studio, which is separate to Call of Cthulhu and the many other obligatory Cthulhu RPGs that are out there. The dice system sounds quite interesting. It's a dice pool of D6s. It says you will be rolling a lot of them, and the an upcoming starter set will include 24 dice in the box.
Wow. 24
Uh,
D6s.
yeah,
Wow.
12 in one color and 12 in another. And it says that
Wow.
it looks like you choose how many dice out of your pool to use for your checks. So rather than having a set amount, you can sort of say, well, I need to succeed at this, so I'm going to take 5 dice out of my pool. And then
Right.
you only
Right.
need, from what I can see, you only need 1 success in order to succeed. And the
Right.
skills, how the skills work is interesting because the skills determine what you need to roll on the dice. So if you've got a skill of +2, that means you have to roll a 2 or higher on a d6 to succeed. Whereas if you've
So,
got a skill of a 6+, you have to roll a 6 on the d6 in order to succeed.
oh, right. So the lower your number in the skill, the better, because that means you have a higher chance of succeeding on that skill in that
Yeah.
case. Okay. It's
Right.
an interesting system.
I know I'm probably not your typical DM when I say this, in the sense that I really don't like seeing such obvious mechanics in a game where it's like, oh, you have to do
Mm,
this, and there's like lots of things to do in terms of like dice
mm,
rolls. Like I try and minimize dice rolls as much as possible when I run a game, because I think it's like, oh, and by the way, you're playing a game. Like I think it takes
little
away
immersion
that
breaking.
a little immersion breaking. Like having that many d6s, it's like it seems like a really complicated thing to think about. And maybe it's not. I don't
Maybe.
know. Maybe it's me just
Maybe
being
not. The only
a
way,
negative ninny.
yeah, because you only need 1 success. From what I
Yeah.
can understand, rolling a lot of
As
dice
long as you
really,
see a
as
6
long as
in
you can
there,
see a
right?
success,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's not like it's going to be a lot of complicated maths
Yeah.
or anything like that. So
Yeah.
Do you guys play like this when you've had like, if one of your players has like a really high like acrobatics on their skills thing, you just say, well, yeah,
Mhm.
your player will just naturally be able to backflip into that tree, no problem.
Yeah, there are certain things I require checks for and certain things I don't require checks for. And then I have a gray area where sometimes if you are proficient in something, I'll let you do it without a check.
Yeah.
Depending on the scale of it. But whereas you're not, you need to roll that check. So, for instance, if it's something just like, oh, I backflip off of this person or over this person, and be like, yeah, you can do so. You're proficient in acrobatics. You have over a 5. You do so handily. You don't need to
Yeah,
roll an
sure.
acrobatics check. But if the paladin in full armor with no training in acrobatics tries that, I'd be like, okay, roll an acrobatics check. Let's call it a 10 or better. That's how I typically judge that kind of stuff.
it's the
And so
risk.
much of so much of it is on the fly, like you're
Yeah.
making calls as a DM all the time that there's no hard and fast rules for.
It's the risk thing,
Sure.
isn't it? If it's a twofold for me, it's is there a risk to doing it,
Mhm.
and is it going to empower the moment or the story
Mhm.
if this is a dice roll versus if I just say they can do it? Because sometimes narratively it's much more rewarding to say, yeah, you backflip over your companion, land on the other side, draw your blade, and clean through the chest of the enemy behind them
Right.
with that attack roll or whatever it is, or you handily climb up the tree and get a good viewpoint of what's ahead of you if you're not in combat.
Right.
Because nobody wants to fall out of a tree and take damage not in combat. It's very unsatisfying and it makes your character
Don't
look like
we?
a fool. If a monk
Yeah.
can't climb a tree to get a vantage point out of combat with no risk of failure, then it makes your hero feel less heroic.
Very true. Right.
Whereas if you're in a combat scenario and you want to climb that tree to then jump from tree to tree like Crouching Tiger, then probably a roll is going to make that much more interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, great.
Damien, any further news?
That's about it, really. Yes, it was a pretty quiet week on news this week.
Okay, I have something to
Sweet.
add as of
Ooh.
20 hours ago.
Uh-oh.
For those of you that have been following, it's Vecna related, so we're back to D&D. It's actually D&D Beyond specific.
Ooh.
And there's a couple of new things that have happened in terms of what's available on D&D Beyond. So 20 hours ago, Mike Bernier, sorry for the mispronunciation, Mike, if you listen, doubt it. But there's a post that says, a message from Vecna the Lich God. And that's like their sort of headline article right now. And if you click on it, it takes you to an actual message written in character for Vecna, which is a comfortable, like, I'd say like a couple of 6 paragraphs or so, which is interesting, 6 short paragraphs. And it does have a secret hidden in the message, which leads to a downloadable reward if you manage to suss it out. They have a spoiler to sort of help you if you need a hint, but if not, you can try and figure it out yourself. So a fun little puzzle with a small reward at the end of it, which is kind of cool. I thought that was awesome. And there's another article there, which is actually specifically for the DMs. And it says, Secrets Unveiled, an overview of Vecna, Eve of Ruin for Dungeon Masters. So it helps. And I only just stumbled across this article from David Barker 16 hours ago. So I've only just seen it. I haven't actually even had a chance to read it through, but it lays out the progress of the adventure. It's kind of almost like the intro that you would expect in the front of a book to tell you, here's what actually happens. Here's what your players are trying to do. Here's where you're going. Plus, you can now see, if you've pre-purchased, the table of contents, including all of the stat blocks for the monsters.
Wow. Does it show? Nice. It shows the stat blocks.
I believe it does. I'll check right now.
I've seen the table of contents. Very interesting.
Yes, there are some interesting things. There are also, and I guess I was a little bit surprised, there are also a few things that have already had stat blocks that I've seen before. They've just not been published in some of the major books, like like the Monster Manual and Mordenkainen Presents Monsters of the Multiverse. There's things like the Corpse Collector, for instance, which is a thing that I've seen before. Or sorry, the Cadaver Collector is technically called. I see. The stat blocks are not visible just yet.
Okay.
But the monsters are listed, which means we know what to expect. And there are things in here that I don't recognize that must be either from older editions or proprietary to the new adventure, which is fun. Some which we know about because we've talked about it before. And I would highly encourage, by the way, anyone who is excited for Vecna to not look at that article that I mentioned, Secrets Unveiled.
I ain't looking at any of it.
For Dungeon Masters. So unless you're planning on running it, don't spoil it for yourself.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good point. Yeah. Cool. Okay, guys. Well, let's wrap it up there, shall we? Yeah. So thank you for joining us, everyone that's tuned in. Always awesome that you guys tune in every week. So we really do appreciate it. We are on the verge of getting a sponsorship deal, which is looking likely probably going to be announced with the next week's podcast. So exciting times ahead. And look out. If you're not on our Discord, please go and join it. It's really cool. A lot going on in there. JC's obviously announced that he's going to be running the Vecna campaign from June at some point on Monday nights.
That's right. It's going to be Mondays now, starting on June the very first Monday of June, June 3rd, will be our session 0 with the campaign proper kicking off on the 10th.
Nice. If you guys are interested in being a part of that, if you go onto the Discord, in the main chat, there is a post. All you got to do is put the hand in the eye on that post, and we'll give you a special Discord rank so that you get first refusal. I can never say it.
Refusal.
Refusal on tickets.
There
you go. So basically, you go onto the waiting list to get a ticket, and we'll let you know first before anybody else that they're available. All right.
Correct.
How many players can you have, JC?
This one's going to be capped at 8.
8, nice, cool.
Let's go.
Okay, great. Exciting
we can get
stuff.
8. We get 8. Sweet. I mean, you're going to need all the power you can get to defeat Vecna and his many cultists and minions. So yeah,
I will say, hearing what JC's done with Icewind Dale, talking to him regularly about it, you're in really good hands. I'm sure JC's going to take that adventure and add a whole lot of lore and a whole lot of gubbins to it to make it exciting. Because what he's done with Icewind Dale sounds really cool. So yeah, you're in good hands.
Singular hand. I'm missing one because I'm cutting it off.
He may have some special guests joining him as well. From like the odd week here and there, maybe me.
A gentleman called Roldark Thane, perhaps?
He might turn up. Who's like long dead, but just seems to keep coming up in games every now and again.
Listen, I still have his stat block somewhere in one of my games. Yeah.
Roldark Thane. How you guys doing? Hey. Anyway, on that note, great for tuning in, guys. And we'll see, or you'll hear us. Maybe you'll see us. We might do a video next week. We've changed it back. So we'll see what's what. And yeah, great. Thanks a lot, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.